All right, this might be all of us for today. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar to discuss starting E-rate. If you've never done it before, we talked about all the basics of E-rate on Tuesday, and that webinar will be, the slides for that webinar will be on both of our websites very soon. Along with the recorded version of Tuesday's webinar available to rewatch. But today we're going to talk about the nitty gritty of starting E-rate, which requires requesting bids, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Idaho Broadband Infrastructure Improvement Grant, otherwise known as BIG. I am Daniel Vogt, the E-rate coordinator for the Department of Education, and joined with me is William Lamb, the technology consultant and E-rate consultant for libraries. E-rate is a tool that's available for schools and libraries, and Will and I work very closely together. And so we are your two state resources available for all things E-rate and general questions about broadband technology, infrastructure, upgrades, and so on and so forth. Today, in this webinar, we're going to talk specifically about how an entity can participate in E-rate if they've never participated before, which for anyone requires going through the Form 470. So we're going to talk about the Form 470 and what it is. It is a form that asks you to facilitate a competitive bidding process. So we'll talk about what the definition of a competitive bidding process is. We're going to talk a little bit about how to get the very best bids for what you're asking for. We'll talk about what happens after you post a 470. We'll talk briefly about what you need to know about Category 2, which is equipment needs. We're going to talk a little bit about the Broadband Infrastructure Improvement Grant. It doesn't have the word Idaho in it. I wish it did. That would have made the last sentence much easier to say. And then we've got some general resources to share with you as well. So how do I get started in E-rate? I'm a school in Idaho or a library in Idaho, and I've never done E-rate to do. What's step one? Step one is talk to us. Hi, I'm Dan. This is Will. I'm not going to do introductions all over again, but we should be your first call. If you have not done E-rate before, or you need it explained to your new staff, or you're getting ready to start a new big project or an upgrade or an expansion, or any other project, we are happy to be your very first stop so that we can guide you toward the right path, toward the right form, toward the right help number, or if there's anything else broadband-wise you need to discuss, please start with us. Because the E-rate process is a year-long process. It's unfortunately not a funding application cycle that you can just start when you're ready to start, because it's meant to coincide with the school year to an extent. So anything that we're doing right now, anything that we're talking about right now, anything that you apply for right now is going to be in relation to the 22-23 school year next year. And which means that at this point in the full E-rate cycle, you can see we're highlighted up here. We're technically within the bidding process portion of the year, the entryway or getting started. Really, in actuality, if you look at these other bubbles, we're in just the general planning and getting your eggs together phase of the E-rate process. The hard and fast actual application and asking E-rate for discounts doesn't happen until usually between January or March. But in order to get to that point, you need to be prepared to ask for them to fund something. They will not fund something unless there's a paper trail that shows how you got to this service or this equipment, that you can prove by paperwork that it is cost effective and that it was the most cost effective option you were able to solicit by posting the Form 470. The Form 470 is the very first step toward all of this. anything you do down the line is effectively attached or cited to a Form 470. If there's problems with this application, they'll look back at the Form 470 from which it came from and judge it according to that. So as amorphous and nebulous and flexible as the 470 is, because you can ask almost for anything with it, it does mean, though, that it needs to be a well thought piece of paperwork in order for other stuff to fall onto. That might sound a lot like a lot. It might sound very overwhelming, but that is okay. Specifically, the Form 470 is the form in which you are stating, hello world, I am school such and such. I have 500 students and I'm requesting bids for more fiber. Hello world, I'm this new library. I have this many patrons and this many buildings, and I need new wireless access points for all of my buildings. Hello world, I need to solicit a managed services provider or a new set of cabling for a project or for infrastructure. Hello world, I need to build out a new fiber line to an all new building that hasn't been built yet, but we're getting ready to build it. And this might require construction. The Form 470 is the form through which you ask for that. It goes out into the world and service providers can see it and respond with a custom tailored bid that meets the thing that you asked for. Will, do you want to stop me or have anything to throw in there before I talk through a few specific examples?
No, I think you very well covered it. Basically, the Form 470, if it's not on a Form 470, it doesn't exist. You can't request funding for something that doesn't exist. So it has to be on there. So it's definitely worth it to plan out what you want before you start even looking and filling out that form.
Right. The exception, though, is if you are brand new to E-Rate, let's say you pay for internet service through your provider and you have a 5-year contract with them. You've had this contract for 2 years, 3 years, and there's a few years left on that contract, but you're interested in E-Rate and you want to seek a discount for E-Rate. You can do that with your existing internet service, but you'll still have to put that through the 470 and pit it against other bids that might come your way. And then if your existing contract is still the most cost-effective option, after 28 days of waiting for bids to come in on the market, then you now have paperwork proof that says my existing contract is the most cost-effective option as of this date, and this is what I would like to seek reimbursement or discounts for. And if that's not how that plays out, we can talk about it. Again, if you're starting E-Rate from nothing and you've never done it before, please talk to either me or Will first before you do, so that we can walk through the whole process and your specific scenarios and forecast what those other future scenarios might be. Let's say you just installed some new hardware and you've never done E-Rate before. Can you seek E-Rate funding for something you just got installed? No, you cannot ask E-Rate for things that you have already paid for or committed to. They will not commit funding if you have already completed or paid a service that did not go through a paper trail of a competitive bidding process via the Form 470. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat too. So if anyone has questions or just wants to raise your hand, I'd be happy to turn on the mic so you can ask a question. Please put either in the chat that you'd like to do that or ask a question in the chat. There's also a Q&A button. I'm monitoring that too. Or I ought to be. Yes, I am. So many little window bubbles open. So in order to, go ahead, Will.
Oh, no. I was just going to say for competitive bidding, it basically starts the formal process to choose the service provider when you're asking for either products and or services. In that Form 470, you must describe in sufficient detail the services, equipment, and requirements for your broadband needs, whether you're a school or a library. It's all the same form, same everything. You have to provide sufficient detail. After that, service providers review your documents and will bid on your services. Most likely this will, if you have an RFP attached, which there are certain circumstances where you'll have to have an RFP, they will follow the outline in that RFP of how you want those bids sent to you. Most of the time, if you don't have an RFP, they will just email them to you. And very rarely will they actually mail them or fax them. And based on that competitive bidding, you are required by USAC rules to select the most cost-effective bid using the price of the eligible services or products as the primary factor. Is there anything I forgot to add into there, Dan?
No, I don't think so. You described that to engage in competitive bidding is to formally ask the market, hey market, I want specifically these things. You can attach a 20-page RFP with details about your site, about your terms and your desired service terms, desired contract lengths. If you want service that can be scaled up to a faster speed in 5 years, or hardware that you can purchase additional hardware for later down the line, what have you, you get to define that in an RFP, and it's your own document, and you get to make the rules. USAC and E-rate become an entity by which those asks are authenticated and overseen by it's not really their marketplace, but they E-rate holds the purse and says, we're not going to pay for this unless we see that this went through a fair, open, competitive bidding process, and there's a paper trail for every ask, every service, every request. We can see the paper trail, and it started here at the Form 470 with an RFP.
So one of the questions we get asked a lot is, what can E-rate pay for? And it basically comes down to two categories, Category 1 and Category 2. The easiest way to figure this out is Category 1 is for your service. Category 2 is for any equipment, and it also includes the management and maintenance of that equipment. So it's anything that makes the internet and broadband connect your patrons to the internet or your students to the internet. Some examples of those Category 1 services include cable modems, broadband over power lines, leased fiber, leased dark fiber, self-provision networks. In some cases, cellular data plans or air card service, satellite service, microwaves, or even MPLS, multipolar call label switching. Anything that we have listed here with an asterisk is required to have an RFP per E-rate rules. And either one of us are happy to help provide some guidance on what that RFP needs to look like, or even some samples in some cases.
Yep, we have samples. We can even proofread it with you, or bring over helpful suggestions. We are a dedicated resource for you to do this thoroughly. And quick note, Will, did you mention the eligible services list?
No, I did not. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. So every year, the specifics of what can be funded by E-rate, what specific technologies, what specific types of technologies are issued every year by the FCC in an eligible services list. For this upcoming year, we do not yet have that list. So please stay tuned. All of this equipment that we have listed right now is based on all existing E-rate stuff. So it could change for this upcoming year. If it does change, you will get a notice from us about it.
And one of the other things about Dan and I is we are actually here year round to help you with the E-rate process. So even if come July of next year, you decide, hey, for the following July, I want to start planning this, we're here to help you. We're here Monday through Friday. So continuing on with Category 2 examples for equipment, it could be anything from new cabling, in a new facility you haven't even built yet, but you're planning on, you can request that. Network equipment, switches, access points, routers, maintenance and operations of that equipment to make sure it's functional for your students and patrons. That can all be requested from E-rate support via Category 2, including technical support for that if something goes wrong in managing your wireless. If you're having issues, if you have a managed service provider that's eligible under E-rate, they can provide that support to make sure it's continued to be up and working. Again, the network equipment and maintenance operations require an RFP, and we can continue to provide samples and templates and help you look over that before it's posted on your 470.
Is this one mine? No, this one's yours too.
Right. So new infrastructure, new building, you want a new fiber line that's 20 miles long from one facility to another. There are, under the state, there is special construction grants available, the big grant. It provides 5 to 10% state match of those special construction costs. And if the state will match that, E-rate will also match that as well. So for example, if your discount is 60% and BIG gives you 10%, USAC would also give you 10%, which brings your coverage from 60 to 80. You would be required to provide that other 20% of funding. Whereas if your discount is 80% and the state gives you 10%, and E-rate gives you 10%, 100% of that special construction is covered. And there are a lot of school districts and libraries in the state that are at 80% because of the ruralness of our state. For special construction, RFP must be posted in their 470 if seeking bids for dark fiber or self-provisioned. To qualify for the big grant, you must speak to either Dan or I or both of us to get approval for that, to make sure we have the funding available. And then we will have to provide you documentation to include with your 470 request.
We want to be able to support you through that whole journey as well, because it's definitely an uphill journey for special construction, which these kinds of asks can also ask for all the equipment needed to power this new service and this new fiber line to a new building. It can be a lot, and we want to be here every step of the way to support you, and also to document it and have an additional paper trail to back you up if things go wrong with E-rate's paper trail and those applications. I see a question, can equipment for fiber be a Category 2 item? And that is, I couldn't have asked or couldn't have written a better question myself. There is, we have yet to see guidance for this upcoming year about that specific question, because it appears as though the 470 application is changing a little bit, and some equipment might fall under the service category, Category 1, whereas other equipment will fall under Category 2. We don't have official guidance or an announcement of things like that, but as soon as we do, we will let you know. What I can say is that you can go file a form 470 right now if you wanted to. However, the new form that's online is different than what we've experienced in the past, and we have yet to see any training or documentation about it, but it appears as though the equipment for fiber might be reconsidered under Category 1 this year. Again, we are awaiting official guidance. We're awaiting an official services list. Otherwise it would be Category 2. So this year might change, and we just don't quite know yet, but we wanted to host this webinar and get information out so that folks are thinking about next year in this long-term project now, rather than by the time guidance is issued. And we don't know when that will be. We didn't want to sit for a month and not start conversations and invite you to collaborate with us on what you're seeking to, or what you're looking to get out of for E-rate. As Will mentioned, actually, no, you didn't mention this. Pardon me. One other thing we just wanted to touch on real quick is that if you want the additional state reimbursement that comes for schools and libraries, where we will reimburse what E-rate did not reimburse for your services, for your Category 1 services, you also have to start with the Form 470 to go through the entire process and come out the other end with a successful funding commitment from E-rate is what qualifies you to get additional state reimbursement from us. Legally, it takes a good faith effort to attain E-rate funding. So as long as there's a record of your paper trail and your attempts and good faith efforts to require or to acquire E-rate funding, then state reimbursement is eligible for you for Category 1 services. We do not have reimbursements for Category 2. So this image real quick is a quick overview of the paper trail. I showed you the big year-long calendar a few minutes ago, and that is a lot and is a little overwhelming, but it is succinctly these 4 forms. Starting with the 470, you ask for what you want. You build a solid request. You receive those bids. You pick one, and whichever one you pick, you will apply to get funded through a 471. That is the big one, the big application. If it's successful, then you will get a funding commitment out of that 471, thanks to all the work you did on the 470. So 470, you yield a service option. The 471, you ask for that service option to be funded. And if you get a positive funding commitment letter, then you move forward to the 486, which is a very light, simple form that just says, I did it. Here's where we're starting. I formally accept the obligations that come with this funding commitment. And then you decide if how you want to get paid with either a 472 or a 474. Do you want to get reimbursed for some of those costs, or do you want your service provider to just bill E-rate and then bill you what's left? So that's why there's those 2 forms at the end, because you get to decide with your service provider which payment plan is going to be best. So as you guessed, the Form 470 is a mechanism of the USAC website, specifically your EPIC profile. If you don't have a profile already, you'll need to give me or Will a call, and we'll help you get it set up with E-rate. And we can verify your eligibility as a school or a library to E-rate, and then E-rate will say, got it, here's a new profile. And with this profile, you can now file any form you want, including the Form 470. So with the Form 470, you are preparing to file for new service. You are preparing to solicit bids from service providers you may not have heard of, maybe ones you are more familiar with. With a Form 470, you, the school, the library, are preparing to evaluate those bids and then pick what could be a long-term contract with that. So with the Form 470 comes great responsibility. That's how that quote goes, right? All right, never mind. There's no audience to laugh at that, or they are, and I can't hear it. We've already touched on this quite a bit, and I don't want to belabor the point too much longer. But the reason we go through the official form is so that E-rate also has visibility over the fact that this ask was out in the open, and that all service providers have access to all the same information. Because they're going to be using that same system through the other end to get information, or to see who else is asking for services or asking for equipment. So it would be wrong to say that the Form 470 is like a marketplace for bidders and service providers. That would not be an accurate characterization of it, but it is like a validating mechanism that keeps everyone in check. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Will?
Yeah, I was just going to say that on that 470, like I mentioned earlier, it has to be specific. You have to detail what you want. You can't just put out a laundry list of items and go, I want all eligible E-rate products or services. You actually have to define what you want. That's the biggest thing with the Forms 470 is it has to be specific. With the Form 470 and the open and fair competition, there's a couple things that you cannot do. One is have a relationship with the service providers which could unfairly influence their how they respond to your bid. request for proposals. You cannot furnish service providers with inside information. You can't tell them what other bidders are providing, what their pricing has been, and then have them change their bid or update their bidding before they even submit it to you. That is a complete conflict of E-rate rules, and will make it where you, in the case of where you've been participating in E-rate, they could audit you and request that funding back that they've given you from the beginning of time. For a lot of people, that's a problem. You cannot have ownership, or anybody that is in the E-rate process have ownership interest in the service provider's company that is competing for those services. You cannot violate your own ethical regulations and policies regarding how you do competitive bidding. You cannot fail to describe the desired products. As I mentioned before, it has to be in detail. You can't just be generic. You cannot receive gifts or donations from service providers that violate FCC rules. In the last 2 years with the pandemic, there have been some exceptions to the gift rule, but it's nothing, it might be they provide you a little more bandwidth for the year or something like that. As long as there's exceptions to that the FCC releases officially, that's fine, but otherwise you cannot accept gifts or donations to help facilitate them winning a bid. And you cannot violate state or local procurement rules. Some cities, districts, whether schools or libraries, have their own rules for requesting bids and RFPs. You must file that on top of E-rate's specific rules. So what happens after you post the 470? We've kind of touched on this a little bit throughout this presentation, but is now on the market for prospective bidders. To respond. They will respond in the manner you ask. If you detail that in an RFP, they'll respond based on that manner. If you don't use an RFP, they'll respond either via email or sometimes mail or faxing it to you. The minimum allowable due date to award and sign a contract is 28 days. You cannot do anything at all between the time you post the 470 and 28 days after the fact, besides answer questions that are asked of you in response to your 470 posting. We strongly encourage that it's posted for 45 to 60 days before awarding a contract to make sure you get best responses, especially if it's a big fiber build out to a new school or location. It's going to take those service providers time to figure out what their needs are, how much it's going to cost them, if they have the equipment on hand, whether they have to contract it out. 28 days doesn't provide them enough time to do that for most things on a larger scale. If they're already providing you service, they can get that done within 28 days. After that, you'll pick the highest scoring and most cost-effective bid with your own individualized scoring rubric. And we have some examples that we could send you that you could tailor to your specific needs. But no matter what, the cost has to be the highest weighed factor when determining who you're going to award it to. So for example, you can award the cost or rank the cost as 50% of the score. And then you have a couple others that, 5 others at 10% or whatnot. And whoever ranks the highest at the end of that is who you should be awarding your contract to.
And those can be factors like experience with the vendor. I just drew a blank. What are some other examples of other categories besides price?
Yeah, so if like, let's say you're part of a library consortium or a school consortium, and you know that they're providing service to one of your partners, and what their experiences are, you can kind of weigh that too based on their experience with other libraries or schools.
Yeah, you can weigh specifically how close to the terms and service that you prescribed in your RFP. If the closer they match, the higher they score. If they didn't answer at all, then that would be a 0, or with certain terms that you asked for instance.
Yeah, and that's a good comment from Cody there, that you actually also weigh whether they're local to Idaho or not, whether they have an office and a presence in Idaho. You will see when you get responses that a lot of companies are out of state and can't actually provide service in Idaho. They just send out blanket responses to 470 requests.
Mm-hmm.
Once the vendor is notified of an intent to award, you're then able to negotiate contract length and timelines for install, but not the price or anything integral to the original RF or 470 request in the received bid. Once you've awarded the contract, you'll next file the details on the Form 471 when the application window opens. As Dan mentioned earlier, that's usually January to March. We don't have an official timeline yet, and we probably won't until December, probably. The earliest any contract can begin is the beginning of the next funding year, which always begins July 1st for E-rate purposes. So if you're a school or a library and your fiscal year begins October 1, you're going to want to make your contracts based on the E-rate funding year, just because it makes life so much easier only having to file for one service provider versus two, or on the off chance that you change service providers and you don't have funding, E-rate funding to pay for them for a few months. You have to pay for that out of pocket. I've personally seen that as an issue for some libraries where they try to move their contract based on their fiscal year, not the E-rate funding year, and it creates issues. So for the upcoming cycle is going to be funding year 2022. So your contract cannot begin until July 1st of 2022. If you're requesting Category 2 equipment installs, it can be done earlier than July 1st to ensure that the service starts on July 1st. But you definitely do not want to schedule any installs or purchase any equipment and have it installed before you receive a positive funding commitment letter. If you do that before you receive a commitment, you're denied, you're responsible for those costs. You can also include in your contract language that if you don't get a funding commitment, the contract is null and void. If you don't get funding availability from grants, state agencies, municipality, or districts, the contract is null and void and you're not responsible for it. So one of the things that we get asked a lot is, what do I do if I get no bids? You can actually reach out to potential bidders and ask them to bid. This can be done in the 28-day waiting period. Obviously, you cannot give them inside information saying, hey, I haven't received a bid, just submit something, we'll approve it. You actually have to put good faith effort. And that's the key word, all this good faith effort for an open and fair bidding process. If you only receive one bid and it is cost effective, you can accept it. You don't have to have multiple bids unless your local policies state otherwise, because you have to follow those policies too. And I haven't seen it very much for E-rate purposes and internet funding where that's going to apply. The biggest thing is just to document your decisions. Whatever decisions you make and whatever choices you make, just document it with a memo or an email for your records. So that way you go back and do it. E-rate rules require you to keep records for 10 years from the end of your service delivery. So you want to keep that for basically forever is the easiest way to look at that.
Yeah, someone once said either until the sky falls or until the end of time, whichever one comes first.
Yeah, it's just easier to just plan forever.
10 years for any relevant info, which can feel like forever. So 10 years is the real timeline.
And those records do not have to be kept in physical form. You can scan them in and put them in a folder, and just as long as you have them accessible and for the amount of time you're good to go. The other big question we get is, what if I don't receive any bids? Can you solicit bids? Yeah, you can reach out to vendors. You can reach out, you can send them an email, have them say, if they're interested in it or not, they can respond. If not, you can just ask your current service provider if they're willing to continue your service, whether they will give you a better deal, whether they'll continue your current deal, whatnot. You just need something documented from them, whether it's they submit a bid or an email to you and say, yes, we'll continue service for you. You just need something documented.
What if you post your 470? Is it done and done? Is it set in stone forever? Yes, but you can fix things if you need to. If you have clerical mistakes, you can go in and fix what's existing. If you need to change the contact, if you need to change where bids get delivered to, like a new email address just for bids, or someone to answer questions for bids, the name of the project, you can edit all that. But if you forgot to add something like, I forgot to add access points for this bid, then you just need to make another form 470. If there's something that's substantially changing what the 470 is asking for, or if you're just asking for like a new service that wasn't already asked for, then you need to post an additional 470. And really, you can post as many 470s as you want. Please don't. but you can. There's nothing I can do to stop you from posting a 470 for each individual service that you're requesting for. That might be easier to organize on the back end. It might be more easier to deal with later when you're filing for the official funding. Just know that once your Form 470 is up into the world, you pretty much need to leave it alone, short of clarification for certain data or points of contact or so on and so forth. What if you need to add more detail to the RFP? Like you're not necessarily, you don't need to change what you're asking for, but you do need to add more detail and clarification. You can totally do that as well by posting addendums to the Form 470. An addendum can take the form of just a page, a PDF with your notes of, please note the due date has changed. It's now 2 weeks longer than previously stated. The new due date is this date. If you're getting this, pardon me, if you need to add more detail to the RFP, you can just add an addendum that says, please note that in the RFP, it should have said this at this point. Contact me if you have any questions. You can totally do that. But sometimes we get a situation where you do get bids and something's changed. Maybe your funding, your expected funding for any of it has changed. Maybe the bids, none of them satisfied your request. Of them, there will be a cost-effective one, but if none of them work for you, you're not obligated to pick one just because you solicited them. You are able to just wipe your hands, walk away and say, never mind, I'm just going to extend my current contract another year and I'll try this again next year. That is absolutely acceptable. If you do that, you don't owe anything to anyone, not bidders for their time. You don't owe anything to E-Rate to post the form or for the time or fees or whatever to manage it. You're good. And if you tried your hardest and you still haven't received anything, you can continue asking and soliciting for requests for service or equipment for as long as you need to. You can post a 470 during the time in which everyone's posting a 471 and asking for stuff. You just come up into tighter deadlines at that point. But if a new ISP opens up in January next door and there's 28 days between now and when you're going to need to file an official ask, then you can make it work and continue doing that. You don't have to do this just until the new year. This can technically happen while the Form 471 window is happening, because things change and we just sometimes you don't have an option until later down the line. But at the end of the day, keep us informed. We're here to help you out and keep you abreast of deadlines and due dates and suggested actions. We need to touch on Category 2 real quick and just talk about the things to keep in mind when you're going to ask for Category 2 equipment. Because Category 2 equipment works, or the Category 2 in general has its own little system within E-Rate. When you ask for Category 1 service, such as a point-to-point microwave internet connection, you're asking for a contract. You're asking to get reimbursed for part of a contract. That contract will either be month to month. It might be 5 years, 3 years, what have you. Maybe it has extensions, whatever. But Category 2, those are usually one-time purchases. You might need to buy $100,000 worth of equipment in order to get the service going and distributed and moving into students and library patrons' hands. Rather than asking for Category 2 stuff every year, every entity has a maximum budget calculated. Right now, that budget expires 2025. So any entity that's going to ask for Category 2 equipment now will calculate their budget for the next 5 years. If that budget turns out to be $100,000, then you can request for reimbursement for items up to $100,000, that reimbursement will be maxed out at whatever your discount percentage is. So if your budget is calculated to be $100,000 and you have a 60% E-rate discount, then the maximum you can get reimbursed for category 2 equipment would be 60% of that, $60,000. So it's a little funky, and it can be a little misleading because it'll say your budget is $100,000, but what they mean is that your pre-discount budget is $100,000. I'm just going to go skip over to this one real quick. This graphic, courtesy of Education Superhighway, just helps illuminate that a little bit. So if you're a school, and this graphic is a little outdated, but if you're a school, your budget is effectively calculated at $167 rather than 180. 180 was the old number, but now it's $167 times the number of students you have. For the purpose of this graphic, it's $180. So you have 1,000 students, your pre-discount budget is $180,000. That does not mean that you can get reimbursed $180,000. That does not mean that you can send them a bill for $180,000 for equipment. That means that you can be reimbursed for up to, if you're an 80% school, 80% of that $180,000. So when you're soliciting for category 2 equipment, or category 2, like a cable installation or managed services, which can be a contract of its own, then providers will be able to see what your budget is, because that's just public info, and be able to say, okay, this is going to cost $180,000. And we understand that you will be reimbursed 80% of that by E-rate. And then the school is responsible for the remaining 20% of that full cost. So when it comes to category 2 stuff, E-rate speaks in the pre-discount numbers, but then reimbursements are calculated by your discount percentage, just like everything else is. So we wanted to get that out now because it can be a little misleading and a little confusing sometimes. And it's important to be specific and talk about which dollars we're talking about when we're talking about category 2 stuff. So I'm going to go back real quick, because category 2 stuff is not just equipment, it's cabling. It could be the installation of all that equipment, of that cabling. It can be maintenance of your existing infrastructure. Again, often very much one-time costs, but they can also include managed services for, monitoring the network, managing access points, what have you. But whatever those are, that dollar amount that you're reimbursed for does have a cap from now until 2025. Once we get to funding year 2026, there will be new rules. There will be a new calculation. There will most likely be everyone will get a new budget that resets on whatever those new up-to-date rules are, because who knows what internet will look like in 5 years anyway. 5 years ago, E-rate was still paying for phone service, and now there's not a lick or a mention of the word telephone anywhere in the E-rate guidance, because it's all internet now. That wasn't the case 5 years ago. Who knows what category 2 will mean 5 years from now? But until then, it means a pre-discount budget of $167 per student, or for libraries, $4.50 per square foot of your libraries. That number determines your budget that you will be able to bill against up to your discount percentage. If you're a very, very small school or a very, very small library, the very minimum funding floor that you would qualify for would be $25,000 for equipment or services. For category 2 equipment. So there is a floor for small entities that don't have big numbers to bolster their pre-budget or pre-discount budget calculation. And at the end of all this, unfortunately, state reimbursement is not available for category 2. There's just not enough money for that, unfortunately. And it's really just me and Will, and we have hundreds of invoices already that we're combing through. And that's not to say we don't want to do category 2 someday. Maybe we will, but that is not reimbursed by the state for the foreseeable future. Well, we threw in this discount matrix just to remind folks what the discount matrix looks like, but I don't remember note wise why we moved in here at this point.
So I think this was just to give an idea of how the discount rates are determined for each entity, whether you're a school or a library. So on the left there, it's based on the percentage of students eligible for the National School and Lunch Program in the school district. In the case of libraries, it's the school district closest to the main branch of the library. So as you can see, if it's less than 1% of the eligible students in the district for an urban school or library, you get a 20% discount. For rural, you get 25%. Where if it's 75 to 100% of students are eligible for NSLP, then you get 90% for category 1 on both urban and rural, and 85% for category 2 on urban and rural. No matter what, E-rate is going to require you to pay something towards your services. In the case of category 1, the state will reimburse you the difference. So that comes out as a wash. You get 100% of your internet connectivity covered. In the case of category 2, if you're in that 75 to 100% NSLP, no matter what, you're going to be paying 15% of your category 2 request out of your budget. And one thing to note too, based on the category 2 funding, especially if you're a small library or school, you're at that funding floor of $25,000. You can't go out and request managed services and pay them $10,000 over 5 years, because then you're going to be responsible for that other $25,000. You only get reimbursed up to that $25,000 floor. So if you sign contracts over your funding amount, you are individually responsible for that difference.
So to summarize, right now we're in the season of planning for next school year. The very last chance you'll have to start the bidding process realistically is February, but we've seen how that goes and it doesn't go very well often, unless there's very special certain circumstances that led to that. This is the time to plan. This is the time to figure out what you need to ask for next year. This is the time to be prepared to put it to paper and start tallying up numbers, start figuring out what the budget is for next year, what the needs are for next year. Is it time to upgrade bandwidth? Is it time to upgrade capacity? Is it time to replace outdated technologies? Is it time to fix up the existing cabling and fortify it? Are you moving into a new school next year? Do we need to talk about getting internet infrastructure into that school in conjunction with the state big grant? All of that is feasible once we put it to paper in a Form 470, which we can do anytime between now and February. We recommend doing it sooner rather than later. Really, October is prime time. It's October 1st now. Sorry, we didn't get this out earlier, but the next 6 weeks are a really good time to start getting stuff out there, because it's going to be holidays before you know it. And that can make bid responses a little more complicated. And that's not to say that they don't happen between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but I know everyone has just everything gets amplified at that time. And so the earlier you can get it out there and the longer you're able to wait and ask for bids, the better prepared you're going to be to have a successful go through with E-rate. The longer paper trail you have, the more success you have at answering any hiccups or stumbles along the way through E-rate. And most importantly, you're going to hopefully get the best possible, most cost-effective service bids that were ethically sourced and overseen by a great company and 2 wonderful E-rate coordinators in the state of Idaho. In case you didn't get the hint, you can call us. You can email us at any time. Will and I both have newsletters for which we post pertinent info for schools and libraries. The links to both of those are there. Will email this slide deck out to you here this afternoon, so you can get those links as well. The E-Rate itself has a fantastic client services bureau. You can call them and they'll answer just about anything or start a help case for you. The USAC website itself is very clean, very orderly, and has tons of really good technical information on there. If you're struggling with a interpretation of some of the stuff on USAC's website, it has its own glossary. So you might be able to solve your question from there, or you can call us. We're pretty good at decoding, and we have access to other folks within E-Rate to answer really tough technical questions. And then lastly, USAC also has their own newsletter that they send out here and there for specifically schools and libraries E-Rate. That's what SL News Brief stands for, schools and libraries, but the website doesn't say that. It's very confusing. So with that, we don't have any live folks. Luigi's covering up the question mark, but this is the time for any other questions, any scenarios you want to throw down. I'm also happy to invite you onto the stage and you can ask questions instead of trying to type it out. Just say so in the chat or in the Q&A section, and I can throw the mic over to you. Otherwise, we're also, like I said, available for phone calls at any time, all year round, emails all day, all year round, and more of these lovely webinars and workshops. So if there's stuff that you want more clarification on, or if you have any feedback for us, this is really our first set of webinars that Will and I have ever done. But we felt it was time for us to get our faces out there and start getting some material out there. So please send us feedback on more categories or concepts or specifics that you'd like us to maybe expand on in the next webinar that we do. Overall, at the end of the day, we are in this weird nebulous period right now where really in a perfect world, Will and I should have waited a little bit longer for E-Rate to put out this year's updated guidance, this year's updated forms. But Will and I felt it was more important that we invite our schools and libraries to start thinking about this rather than how to do it. It was important for us to get the balls rolling in that regard. So the official process and some of the official rules and eligible services might change between now and Thanksgiving. We don't have any control over that. Candidly, the E-Rate machine got a bit bogged down this year because of the Emergency Connectivity Fund. They had to share resources and expand upon their existing program and make it a whole new side program with $7 billion to burn for hotspots and laptops very quickly. So they've been a bit stretched and are overall behind this year because of the Emergency Connectivity Fund. I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't see anything else. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. This slide deck will be emailed out to all of our registered participants here in a couple hours. Thanks again. Will, any other parting words?
No, I think that you've kind of covered it. Main thing is if you got questions or anything, reach out to either one of us or both of us, and we can assist you.
Yeah, Will and I we collaborate often, so we're more than happy to have two pairs of eyes on something than just schools or just libraries.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. We appreciate it, and have a great weekend.